Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's NBAR meeting. We'll begin with public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to an issue that is not on today's agenda? Please raise your hand or wave at the computer.
We do not have any public comment this morning.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to member recusals. Has anybody talked to applicants, planning staff, or anything that's involved with today's agenda?
No.
Not hearing. We'll move on to the agenda status report.
There's no changes to the agenda.
Thank you very much. With regards to the meeting minutes for June 28th and July 26th, you were given meeting minutes in your packets this week to review. Is there any revisions and or additions you want to make to those meeting minutes? We'll start with June 28th.
No changes.
Yeah. All right. Then with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes for June 28th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
One abstained.
Can I get the motions again, please? Who? Michael, and then second. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now moving on to the meeting minutes for July 26th. Would you like to make any additions or revisions?
No changes.
All right.
No changes.
Then with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes for July 26th.
So move.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
One abstained,
Oh, I'm sorry, I was absent.
as was I. Okay. With that, we'll move on to the NBAR members informational briefing. Has anybody had any discussions with planning staff and or supervisors with regards to what we do here? Okay, not seeing anyone rise. We'll move on to the staff update.
Hi, everyone. This is Shannon Reese. I have an exciting update about the Perkins Place project out in Cuyama that you reviewed when they had proposed kind of a mid-century modern design that was 3 stories, and based on your feedback, they changed to more of a farmhouse aesthetic and dropped it down to 2 stories, which the Planning Commission loved and approved unanimously on Wednesday. So that was a pretty exciting approval, and we await the zoning clearance to effectuate that permit, but there were a lot of speakers from the community that appreciated the changes that the NBAR encouraged on that project. So thank you all.
That was the one in Los Alamos? No, is it?
Out in Cuyama, on the western end of Cuyama, New Cuyama.
It was a while back.
Yeah, tall 3-story. All right, then with that, we'll move on to today's standard agenda. Let's look at NBAR 2400029, the Verizon at 2800 Telephone Road. If the applicant is available, go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Armando Montes with Decoy Deployment Services, representing the applicant Verizon Wireless. I am returning today to represent the proposed Verizon Wireless project at 2800 Telephone Road in Santa Maria. So I'll just go through my spiel one more time. Verizon's proposing a new facility here at 2800 Telephone Road. The proposed project is located at the northwest corner of the property, set back 100 feet from the existing property lines. The facility itself is designed as a 50-foot tall faux water tank where all the antennas and radios will be housed. All other associated equipment will be located in the proposed 900 square foot lease area at the base of the tower, shielded behind a 6-foot tall redwood fence. Since our last NBAR hearing, which was months ago, we've taken the time to address the comments that NBAR identified. On sheet A1, we've identified the distance from our lease area to Telephone Road. Also on sheet A1, we provided setback distance from our lease area to the adjacent residence. We provided an additional elevation sheet to better depict our project in relation to Telephone Road. That's going to be on sheet A6. And then lastly, I believe the board asked to see the site as a non-stealth, just essentially a monopole. We generated a photo simulation of what that would look like and provided it to our planner. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up on my end. I'm open to any questions you guys may have.
Do you have the dimensions of it's a faux water tank, right?
Correct.
Do you have the dimensions and the finish of it?
Yeah, there should be on the elevations. Let me see. Let me pull it up really quick on my end. Yeah, so if you go to sheet A5, you'll see better dimensions of the tank.
It doesn't dimension the tank. So it's about 10 or 12 feet tall.
It's a 10-foot tank, yeah.
And then how wide is it?
Diameter wise, let's see.
13 feet?
Yes,
Does it have a
13 feet.
bottom?
To an extent, yes, but for the most part, I think it's more of like a mesh bottom, just so we can let the equipment breathe.
Does it appear as a solid from
Is
the ground when you build these?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Does it appear as though it's a solid material when you're,
Yes.
and then the finish is, there's bands and there's wood, simulated wood and that sort of thing. Do you have any, how do you finish all that? Are they black bands and?
No, typically it's brown. It's usually, we kind of go through different colors. I think we sent material board a long time ago. Typically it's kind of like a calf brown kind of wood finish. The bands, we've left them brown in the past, so it's all brown. I know other projects, we've painted them like a lighter gray to add some contrast. But yeah, we don't have a specific colorway right now. You know, we're definitely open to any suggestions you guys may have. Every project's different.
And then you've got a scaffolding simulated thing holding it up, the tower. What are they made? What's it made of? And what's the dimensions of the frame?
Yeah, so it's a steel scaffolding. In terms of the diameter of each leg, I don't have that information.
Okay, I'd like to know how beefy it's going to look and that kind of stuff later. And what color you're going to paint it and what color you're going to do the tops and all that sort of thing. And then the center column is that typically, what do you usually do there? Is it just a big pipe?
Yeah, so it's a pipe. That's where all the cabling runs down to the equipment area on the bottom.
I want to know the finish and the color of that too when you're doing it later.
Understood. Yeah, so like I said, we could usually, I wish that we had the material board, but yeah, usually it's like a calf brown. If you look at the Sims, it's something similar to that. Is there a specific color you guys are looking for on the site?
Well, something that would make it kind of go away a little bit because you're trying to emphasize the scaffolding going up the frame as opposed to this pipe in the middle. So I wouldn't paint it the same color as the frame. And I want to know how big the frame is because it could be a little light thing that looks kind of funny. It needs to look like it's holding everything up for the water tank. If you know what I mean, structurally.
Yes.
And then at the bottom, that's a wood fence, right?
Yes, that's a wood fence in the bottom.
It's a solid wood fence?
Yes, it's a red wood fence.
Okay. Thanks.
I had a question. I believe when we looked at this last time,
Mm,
there's some interest from the board for knowing what it would be if it was just a regular monopole and wasn't a water tank, and was it the property owners that were asking for a water tank? Or was it the applicant?
I believe, I mean, I think on this one, just given its location, given that, you know, it's more of like in a rural farming area, we believe that the water tank would be, you know, the best idea here. I believe it was more applicant driven, just to kind of blend in with the rest of the aesthetic of the area, you know, given some of the areas of visibility. And this is typically Verizon's best option in their catalog. So that's why we settled on a water tank. I do remember the comment from the last hearing about wanting to see it as a non-stealth option. We did generate a photo sim for that to present to you guys. It should have been part of our application. Do you guys have that by any chance?
I saw it earlier when we went right past it.
Was it this one?
Let's see. Can you scroll down a little bit? Let's see. Yeah, that's what it would look like if it was just a monopole.
I have a question.
Mhm.
I'm looking at this and the comments that we've been discussing about the appearance of it being a faux water tower.
Mhm.
I don't see water tower in this in anything other than the most basic of gestures. It really looks like a monopole with a ring around the top. I mean, it's going to either look like a water tower or it doesn't. I don't see anything that would suggest that it's definitive in either way. So discussing the color sort of is moot at this point to me. Thank you.
I would just want to follow up with the reason I brought this up was when we looked at this last time, all we saw was other telephone poles and we kind of, I got the feeling that everybody kind of thought that something that looked just like another telephone pole would be the thing that went away the best. Now, I can't speak for anybody else, but I thought that's what the general consensus was. Now, I'm gonna leave it at that. It looks more reasonable to me, but other than that.
Well, I think that's my recollection as well, that we talked about just this, putting a single pole up there and rather than trying to put a big old fake water tank in the air. That's just my opinion, but I think we mentioned that before. Guess I don't.
Is there any way to make it sit on the ground better? It just looks like a pole sticking up out of a box. There's no screening. There's no attempt to soften it, to make it blend in. From this point of view, we see a lot of trees and vegetation, and then that thing is sitting on top of the hill. Is there any reason why there was no landscape included around it?
Yeah, so we've talked with landscaping, you know, with Verizon on this site and with the property owner. The kind of issue that we have here is that it's the area around the cell site is dry farming for I believe alfalfa. We don't have any running water out there in that area. We'd have to talk to the landlord about somehow bringing water all the way to this portion of his property. And then it would also be additional areas we would need to overtake essentially in order to place landscaping. They haven't been super receptive to it. We've mentioned that it could be a possible sticking point from the county. So at this time, we didn't provide any additional screening, just because we also have the 100-foot setback from the property line on Telephone Road. The property itself doesn't have a lot or much landscaping at all, so we thought adding a bunch of landscaping to this property might cause more attention to it.
Well,
Can I-
respectfully, I disagree with you.
100%.
Can I just add from a policy consistency perspective, and the assigned planner might be able to contribute more, but like we would consider this to be skylining and prominently visible from a public viewing area. And so there are policies that apply that require them to make it look like some sort of man-made structure or be screened by landscaping. So it might not be approvable as a monopole. So if that's an option that you're considering, I would want to hear from the planner to see if that's even possible from a policy consistency perspective.
So in clarity, you saying that if they build the water tower, that has a different perspective from the county than a monopole? Based on your policies?
Yep, there is a specific development standard. I don't have it in front of me, but you know, disguising something as something that would be a part of either the man-made or the natural environment, if it's prominently visible from a public viewing area, needs to be done. So, you know, some examples of that are the trees, or making it look like a water tower instead of a pole. Who is the assigned planner on this one, Teresa?
That's me, Shannon. I'm here.
Oh,
And I'm sorry, this is Aaliyah Vosberg, the planner. I am pulling up that section quickly. So it's a little difficult because the way it's set up is they either need to comply with this section or they need to request an exemption from the section from the decision maker. And that exemption has to be based on a number of things, one of which is let's see, failure to meet the standard is required due to a technical consideration. And then do we have a chat? I can throw no, maybe not. Okay. So it's possible to be exempted from the decision maker if it's due to a technical consideration, like it is not feasible to construct the project any other way. The section that Shannon was referring to states, let's see. Telecom facilities shall be substantially visible from public viewing areas, like this one is, shall be sited below the ridgeline, depressed, or located behind earth berms in order to minimize their profile and minimize any intrusion into the skyline. In addition, where feasible and where visual impacts would be reduced, the facility should be designed to look like a natural or man-made environment, for example, designed to look like a tree, rock outcropping, or street light. Oh, thank you. Or designed to integrate into the natural environment.
Oh, I have a question for the applicant. Did you provide us with a photo sim for the water tower? And then my other question is the photo sim that we have up right now with the monopole,
Mhm.
in relationship to its proximity to the telephone poles, is that telephone pole directly under the D in proposed, close to the monopole?
Yeah, so that telephone pole, yeah, it would almost be in line with it. It's a little offset, but it's pretty close in line with it, I would say.
I mean, I can certainly see that with the Skyline application, that there are, 20 telephone poles in that Skyline. And I'm hard pressed to think that a water tower would be a less desired look.
More desired or less desired?
Less desired.
You think the water tower looks
So you
better?
like the water tower look better?
Less desired for me. I think the monopole looks fine, only because there are 20 telephone poles that look almost like it.
It'd be more-
More desirable, I'm sorry.
And we also have photo simulations as well of the water tank too, as we originally generated.
Right. Is that
There's
in this
also
packet?
it should be, yeah. I think we submitted it before.
And
There's also more views of this monopole if you guys want to scroll down, if you guys want to get a better idea of it. But
yeah.
Is that Cambridge Way? It is, right there, I'm sorry. Read. So it's directly across from Cambridge Way. Okay. I was trying to figure out where it was on Tobin Road.
I drove out there, couldn't figure out.
That makes it real clear right there.
Well, for my 2 cents, I prefer a water tower than a monopole out there. But I think you need, if we're gonna do a water tower, it needs to be a little bit beefier. The legs need to be beefier. It needs to be well done.
Shannon? You there? Hello? Janet?
She's on mute.
I see your name 3 times.
I'm just, my question is.
I don't think, because you're not using the microphone. She can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, if you don't speak into the mic, I can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that if they stick with the water tower, then they don't really need to worry about landscaping. It sounds like they have some problems with getting and being able to care, not putting in, but obviously being able to care for landscaping in that area at this point in time. I don't know how bad the restraints really are. It looks to me like there's a house and some, maybe that's a neighbor's property. I don't know. But to get away from the landscaping requirement, they need to put in something that looks more man-made than something that's definitely man-made, like a monopole. Did I understand it correctly?
Would want to
I'm
see
gonna
that either
defer
way.
this over to Aaliyah because she's researched the specific site and already looked at all the policies for this project. So she has more context to be able to answer that.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, our code also separates landscaping into a separate requirement under telecom. And so it is separate from the issue of whether it's a concealed design or not. Again, the code is not the clearest when it comes to landscaping. I mean, it starts by saying the facility shall be constructed to maintain and enhance existing vegetation without increasing the risk of fire through the implementation of the following measures. But then under that, one of those measures is additional trees and other native adaptive vegetation shall be planted and maintained in the vicinity of the project site and associated access roads, power lines, and telephone lines under the following situations. And those are if the vegetation is required to screen improvements from public viewing areas, or if the facility and related improvements are likely to become significantly more visible from public viewing areas over time. So the way that we read that, we do typically require landscaping, but we would be interested in hearing your board's opinion on the need for that in this situation.
Well,
I think the board is.
go ahead.
I think the board has made its thoughts and input fairly clear on this, going back to the last presentation. And I'm sitting here trying to separate out the issue of water and the issue of landscaping. And just notice that with this extraordinary proliferation of cell towers lately, this is one of the few that we've actually seen where the location and what it looks like matters. It's not out, you know, in the wilds of Kuyama, for instance. This is in a place where you see traffic, where people will see this every day. And I think every effort should be made to make it either blend in or disappear. Right now, it does neither. The cell tower, as it stands, is preferable, but it still should be landscaped. That's barren up there, and it looks like it's just very unappealing, particularly with the trees in and around the area. It's a prominent site, and it should be treated with a little bit more care, I think, than what I'm seeing right now. At least that's my opinion. Thank you.
Well, my opinion here is that I don't think we're going to grow any landscaping that's going to hide this thing. So that's not realistic, but I do think that we should provide landscaping at the base of it. And I also would support the monopole. I think that after a few weeks, nobody's even going to notice. It's going to look like another telephone pole out there. I mean, it's silhouetted in this view, but it's that if you could see the same view with the big water tank sitting up there, I think it's going to look much more obtrusive.
And the other thing is that the water tower, the faux water tower doesn't look like a water tower. In this vicinity, if there was a preponderance of original old historic water towers, maybe the case could be made for making one that looked more like they did and actually enhance the skyline. But I think everybody's opinion is that the simple cell tower works the best.
Mr. Chairman.
I've looked at these things hundreds of times, worked on them, and I know that they can be softened with landscape. You can get some varied heights, natives, and get them irrigated to get them established. So it's not that difficult to do. So I
How about
would really,
one other potential option is one of the other quote unquote man-made structures, one of the trees. Has anybody given that any thought?
what's that?
One of the trees?
You mean a phony tree versus a phony water tower?
Yeah, we didn't really consider a tree here at this location. I think given that it's the property itself, at least in this portion of the property, it's pretty flat. It's pretty dry. We thought putting a giant monopole in wouldn't blend in as great. That's why we went with the water tower.
Mr. Chairman, at City of Santa Maria Planning Commission just approved a faux eucalyptus tree, which didn't look bad. It looked really, it was in town even. So if they were to look at something, I think it'd be preferable to have something that, like you said, looked like a tree. I agree with Kevin and Michael with landscaping. You need to soften that up. The other thing was, I'm okay with the monopole. And I'm just thinking, if you're out there driving and you're heading in this direction, you're heading east, your sight line is not going to stay up. You're going to be concentrated on the road, especially for cross traffic. So yeah, and the telephone poles that are already there. I'm looking at your sheet A2, and you're showing two PG&E poles in close proximity to each other that almost, yeah, right there to the left. You have those two poles, those existing poles that it look like they almost could screen a monopole. So I'm okay with the monopole. I'm okay with requiring some landscaping like Michael and Kevin noted, and maybe even look at that eucalyptus. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Getting back to Kevin and Michael, where would you put the landscaping in relationship to the work site for screening purposes?
Okay, I have worked on these cell tower sites between Sacramento and Ventura. And we generally plant trees outside of the fenced area. It means an increase in their land lease area, but other entities have required this, so it's not uncommon for them to have to do it. You can do it with a tank. You can run an irrigation line if that's feasible, but there's lots of ways of doing it. And if you pick the right plant material and place it right, there'll be tall stuff, small, short stuff, and you can create it so it sits in its environment and looks like it was meant to be there.
Yeah. I agree.
Does the board have any other comment at this time? Okay, Armando, as you're agendized for further conceptual review, I would look and discuss with the landowner the possibility of landscaping around the fenced area. And then take the suggestion of possibly looking at the uke design for this site.
Hey, Mike, I'm not even sure that if you look back at the sim, the neighbor, it looks like the neighbor directly to the south had palm trees, and it looked like it was about the same height as the palm trees. I have seen a few of the palm trees and that they made for these things, and they're not the prettiest, but it is something that was in the general area.
Yeah, they're like 4 or 5 within 500 feet.
But at the end of the day, I guess it probably really won't make that much difference what it is, as long as people get used to whatever's there. They get used to the telephone poles, they get used to whatever's there, no matter what, and it just is what it is, so.
Okay, so yeah, I'll definitely bring back the landscaping issue with the landlord, dive deeper into it, as it looks like it's going to be, a sticking point for our approval. A little bit unclear with the stealthing on this project. It kind of sounds like we're going back and forth. Seems like we're going to bring forth a mono uke design the next time. And would we get any kind of firm decision on where we go from there? Because we're just going to keep going. It sounds like we're going to keep going until we find a design we like. I would just like more clear direction. Are we going to go stealthing or non-stealthing?
I would recommend non-stealthing. I would just go with the monopole. I don't know. Or what everybody else.
If the board is torn on which design type, like if there's a split and people don't feel strongly either way, there could be a proposal to take both designs to the planning commission, and you could let the planning commission select. That's one way you could handle it.
Are we in that much disagreement between us about that it should be a monopole? I don't either, but I don't like a fake looking cell tower. I mean, a fake looking.
Yeah, they need to do a better job with the design of the thing, but that's a direction. If we decide to do the monopole, then it's moot. The other thing is I'm in favor of landscaping. The worst tree I ever saw was the other day. I saw a palm tree. It looked like a cell tower with a hat on it. It was the worst thing I ever saw. I mean, it was ridiculous.
You're right.
And I've seen some really bad eucalyptus too. Is that eucalyptus that the city, I mean, they're the wrong color. I went in a grove of eucalyptus and it was gray, and all the other eucalyptus, different color. They didn't particularly, they're difficult to do. Also, I've seen some really bad pine trees that look like scrub brushes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The water tank can become a feature of the road.
If
it's
it was,
done right.
if it was a well-designed and adequately built water tank, the water tank would look very nice.
Yeah,
I
and so, hopefully
I'm
that's where they go.
with Jim on that. The ones we have seen look like a cheap way to screen a monopole.
What about that one in
and-
Orchid? Do you like that one?
That one was done pretty well, and I think that
We could have him go look at it.
I mean, that one was actually done with some girth and some,
Mhm.
and it looked good. Now, I don't know if it's 50 feet tall. It may not be as tall as this one. I don't believe that one was quite that tall. And maybe that makes a difference to them in their design from an engineering standpoint. But in lieu of something that looks like a really nice, like a real water tank, I would say that the monopole's the best option for the location because it's going to blend in with the other telephone poles that's out there. Because I agree, the palm trees, I haven't seen one palm tree looking one that looks halfway decent at all. They look really silly, but
But the reality is that this is, what you're gonna visually see is what's silhouetted against the light sky.
the less you see, the better it is.
That's exactly my perspective on this,
So-
is that you put a big old 13-foot diameter, 10-foot tall water tank 50 feet in the air. It's gonna be much more intrusive on the skyline than a.
So it sounds to me like
model.
what the board's saying is that, A, they think that we need some kind of screening just to take the visual off of the fence. The monopole would probably be the best exception unless you wanted to have a water tank that really looked nice, like the one down in Old Orchid, if that could be done at 50 foot high. That paraphrase pretty well?
I think it-
Can I add something to it? That I would like you to come back with some well-done proposals. What we're looking at is an absolute bare minimum presentation to us. You've heard all of our input, and there's a lot of elements that is missing that would make this a better project. And if you listen to all of that and put it together, you could come back with a better proposal for a water tower, a better proposal for a monopole, a better proposal for a faux tree. It's just, I think we're being given the absolute bare minimum.
I mean, I
In,
just sat here.
in regards to the water tank, being a better design, are we talking about beefier members on the legs and things of that nature? I'm trying to get an idea. I know you guys mentioned there's a better example.
The scale of the materials, the angle of the base. Look at old water towers and see what they really looked like, the ones that were built a long time ago. Beefier looking. It has to look like it's strong enough to hold up however many pounds of water would be up there, which is a lot.
I just Googled faux water tower. And there's about 100 of them here. Every one of them is different, architecturally different. Some are more interesting than others, but I find it hard to believe that we can't come up with something that actually would enhance the skyline, the sightline view, rather than something that's intrusive and just vague in gesture, which I think the current proposal for that's the faux water tower is. It's neither fish nor fowl.
Okay, then let me add this. Armando, the water towers that you have are pre-manufactured.
Yes,
off-the-shelf
they
water towers.
come from, they usually select a vendor that builds these guys.
So your options to make it more like a water tower, give it beefier legs, adjust the proportion of the structure itself would be a one-off. It's not something you can just pull off the shelf, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely ask our architects to design something a little bit more natural. We can probably also go to the manufacturers of these and kind of look through their catalog. Like you said, there's different ones, and kind of get an idea of what we could propose, maybe pick certain elements off of different tanks to kind of make something a little bit more unique.
Okay, then with regards to the presentation itself, I think we've got a majority here on the board that would like to see a monopole. But because of its location, its prominence in that skyline, perhaps a more proportional water tower would be appropriate for this particular site. So my suggestion would be to discuss the landscaping options with the landowner, because they're going to come up on both of them, either the monopole or the water tower, based on the requirement for skyline. And with that said, come back to us with just a little bit cleaner and more thought out presentation.
Understood.
Perfect. The board have anything else to add?
I do not.
Okay.
I just want to mention that we do not have any public comment on this item.
I was getting to that, young lady. But thank you. So with that, discuss it with the landowner, discuss it with your architect with regards to the proportion of the water tower, and then we will see you in 30 days.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 2, BR number 240053, the Verizon cell tower at 2775 Clark Avenue. If the applicant is ready, go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm back again. Armando with Sequoia Deployment Services. This is our second review for this project, our final review for our project at 2775 East Clark Avenue in Santa Maria. I believe the board initially approved this project a few months ago. We went to Planning Commission earlier this month, gained their approval, so we're back in front of you for our final approval.
Now, on this particular one, the road's much higher than where this will be located, if I remember correctly. Yes. Okay, in reviewing the comments, the last comments that we had, you going to Planning Commission, getting approval on that. Is there anything else that the board needs to look at on this particular project?
I don't believe so. I know it's part of our process. We need to go back to BAR for
Right.
Final review and approval.
Do we have a photo sim of that one? Right.
No. No, we do not.
Teresa, can you pull up the site plan? The overall site plan? I think it's in.
Is there a different sheet?
Go back one. Down one. That one. Can you zoom up to the area of work?
Right here?
Yeah.
Right over.
There's a dimension on there.
You see it?
It's a very large site. I'm familiar with this site.
Yeah.
It's very large. Site. No public access.
Is that backed by the windrow of eucalyptus trees?
Yeah, it's kind of next to Gladaway at their Plantel Nursery on Clark.
There's two Clarks out there. What is that?
There's probably a lot more. There's probably a lot more Clarks than you know.
This one's not gonna be.
Oh, right
I-
here.
I imagine public will never
Thank
get
you.
to see it on the street.
Where is
It'll
that?
Just be a passing movie.
Yeah, it was 259 feet away. Okay.
There's two Clark Avenues, yes.
So we had some recommendations on there. Were those followed?
Yeah, so I believe from our last meeting, we had a note regarding the color of the pole. I know we kind of went back and forth on it for a little bit. We kind of decided on a galvanized pole that was going to be in a low shine finish. We felt like that was the best solution for this.
Are there actually two Clark Avenues or is this? Let's show two Clark Avenues. They're not far apart.
Okay. So getting back to the
Clark Avenue, Clark Avenue.
monopole on the Clark Avenues. With the fact that they have a non-reflective galvanized finish on it, it's dulled. Looking at our comments, that was basically about it. Does the board have any final comments before we vote on this particular project?
No, as long as it's the dull gray, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Okay. And then at this time, I'll ask for, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this particular item?
We do not have any public comment.
Perfect. With that said, I'll ask for a motion to approve this project as presented.
I'll make a motion that we approve this project as presented.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hey, that was easy.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, Armando.
All right, I'll talk to you guys soon.
You bet.
Bye.
Okay, moving on now to item number 3, BR 24-00111, Burritos Lalo sign. Is the applicant available?
Yes.
Go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
On right here.
There you go. Jordan Shepherd with Signs of Success. Okay, so this is very similar to what was in the site before. This is the corner of Clark and Broadway and Old Orchid, the old homestead sandwich shop. So signs are going right back in the same spot where Homestead had their signs. The next page is going to show you the old look. And so that's, yeah. So they've painted that off now at the landlord's request. So the building is going to be, I think, plain except for the sign.
Take off the fake brick too.
I think so, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. That's not part of anything to do with me, but I'm just doing the sign. But just for your reference. Now the sign is going to be in an architectural recess that's already in the wall. Okay, so there's already a spot kind of built for it. So that's what that backer is, kind of the same as the previous. So that's just a latex painted finish on a composite panel. And then if you want to go to the next page, we can see the letter. So the two-tone background is going to be matching these samples here. So we've got, that's going to be your composite finish, which is just matches the paint color of the wall, and then your letter finish. Okay. And then the letters themselves are going to be white. And the letters, the white letters are raised. So using HDU, which is a carved product used a lot in Old Orchid. This is for Rigetti, but not related to this job. But the letters are carved out, profiled with a little bevel. And that's the Burritos Lala part. The Mexican food is going to be only 1/2 inch thick, and they'll all be done in a satin painted finish. And that's pretty much it.
And the background outline color for each letter is applied to the wall, right?
Yeah, that's not raised.
And the letters are only, they're a little thin, they're not thick like that, right?
Yeah, they're thick like that. The Mexican food is a 1/2 inch thick, because that's at that height, it would look silly being, and the Burritos Lala is 1.5 inches thick. So this is about, I think 2.5 inches thick. So it'd probably be about, that's the thickness
So
there.
that's,
for the
that,
large
that
letters.
square, that rectangle is recessed. Do you know how deep it's recessed just stucco down?
Yeah.
So this is gonna stick out farther than the finish of the.
Oh,
is
yeah.
that right?
Yeah, it'll stick out farther than the finish. It's similar. There's a brewing place that has really similar letters like that. There's quite a few spots in Old Orchid that have these non-illuminated letters. It's proportional to the depth. So like anytime you get a letter that at this size, 1.5 inches is a real common depth for a non-illuminated letter. You start getting thinner, and it starts to make the letter feel a little bit weak.
So it's gonna be squared off, not like that. It's got a lot of.
No, yeah, it's gonna be
on it?
squared off. It'll be squared off. I think we might put a little, on Mexican food, it'll be squared off. On Burrito Lalo, we're gonna do a little finish on the edge, a little, a small, but unless you guys want it to be squared off, doesn't matter to me.
I think it'll be nice.
I think so too.
The area is the same as previous time.
Mhm. Yeah, actually a little smaller because they had like established underneath it.
You say it's not illuminated, are you gonna provide any external illumination?
So we did talk about that with the client, and about doing some gooseneck lights, but unfortunately the cost of the permit deleted that from the scope.
It's also a cast concrete building,
Yeah. Okay.
Bank of Italy.
I think it's good.
I do have someone online wants to know the sign that you were just holding up the letter.
Mhm.
Is it possible to have Kevin just hold it up, because
Oh,
he is the one that is. Let's see. He's the only one on camera. Give me a minute. Oh.
They can see the-
Oh, no.
Yeah, that one's thicker than
It's also 3 colors.
this is, yeah. It's the school colors.
I like the substantial feel of it because it's a concrete building. It was an old bank. and It
Mhm.
needs to have that same sort of heavy feel to it.
It needs to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Could we go back to the front elevation, please?
One down. There we go.
Oh,
One up.
more?
Back.
One more page up.
So the overhang right over the sign,
Mhm.
how deep is that?
I'd say about 16 inches to 18 inches deep. That's where we were thinking about. And maybe we might come back later with something for lights, but we were gonna top mount lights on it and then have them gooseneck over, which I think
Right.
would look really cool. But again, it was the out of the budget.
I mean, it would look so great.
It would look really cool.
It really would.
I think once the place is open for a while and he's made back some of his costs, he'll upgrade that.
Would he have to come back for that? For the lights?
Put it in our findings. Encourage that.
Yeah, I would say so.
Appreciate it.
And necessarily.
I mean, it would make a huge difference.
Mhm.
Just illuminating a period, but much
Mhm.
less having it something that was in character with the building. Yeah.
Okay. So is there a second meeting required or? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you're, because you're conceptual, you can come back for preliminary slash final.
Okay.
Have any other comments or other concerns?
Okay.
Yeah, with regards to the color and the size of the lettering.
Awesome. Nice.
Can you clarify that request? Was it for the applicant to return for prelim and final in one meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
One other,
Shannon, he'll have to bring a color board back, right?
I have one here if you want.
that's not a color board.
You want to put it on a board? Okay. All right. Well,
One question also, you had mentioned that the artwork, quote unquote, had been painted off. The artwork on the side, the water tower, the faux brick, that has already been painted off, or is it going to be painted off?
I need to go by and check. It's outside of what my,
Because I mean, it kind of matters what the ultimate look of the building is. I mean, right now, it's a little busy, but it's interesting.
Mhm.
If the whole building was painted white and then with just the sign with no illumination, it starts looking a little
Mhm.
bare.
Yeah, I think it looks really clean without it. I think it is painted off. I'd have to double check, but I can bring back more current pictures.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You need to talk to your planner about the color board because you might have to submit it digitally.
Okay. No problem. Yeah, it's just matching the trim color that's already on the building, so that band at the bottom.
Mhm.
And then the casing around the door in the front elevation is gonna be that, and then white letters and then the dark brown. But so you just want these things in a digital file?
Talk to your planner.
Okay,
Yeah, you'll have one assigned to it. And then the only thing I
Um,
would suggest would be to, update your picture as to what the building looks like now.
yeah,
Also, in the middle window where it says deli, clearly this isn't going to be a deli unless it's a Mexican deli, which would be cool.
no, that's,
so that
I'll
should
get
be
I'll get a
included.
current picture where this is just a previous render.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay, we just should see the way it's going to look. Thank you.
Does the board have any other comments at this time?
Oh, they already opened.
They're open already.
Mhm, yeah, last weekend.
How's the food?
It's good. Yeah, I had the wet burrito. It was pretty good. Yeah.
All right.
Still see outside like they did before.
Yeah, they stopped that.
Okay.
Let's go close to your office. You can walk over there.
Yeah, well,
I used to live there.
take our suggestions, and just come back for prelim, work with your planner once they get assigned and then come back for prelim final.
Great. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number. All right, so now let's move on to item number 4, BR 21-00254, the mixed use development. Is the applicant available? And if so, please introduce yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
Yes, I'm here. My name is Tony Cano. I'm not sure how to activate the microphone here. Okay, turn it off. Hey, there's been a long time since we last saw you. I think it was January. We've been waiting on County Roads Department to make some determination on the Waite Street side, so felt like it was prudent just to come as a joint presentation for both projects. I see that we're agendized for a preliminary approval, not preliminary final. Is that everyone's understanding?
Yeah, I mean,
If your drawings have all the construction details that would provide the
Oh, I see. Yeah,
information
sure,
that we
sure.
need, then it would be.
That
final.
makes total sense. So we had a number of items from the last meeting for the Bell Street side. And I believe we've answered all those questions. Is it typical to read those comments and then for me to address them
Well, go ahead and just
item by item?
go through the revisions that you've made.
Okay.
And we don't need to read them, but we can go right down that line.
Teresa, do you have our set ready
Yes.
on the Bell Street?
Is this the one we're reviewing or the other project? Because this one is for,
Yeah, that's Wade Street. So we're looking for the Bell Street side, mixed use. There we go. Sure. I think the first consideration was the outdoor condensers and air conditioning. If you'll flip to my elevations, you'll see that. Yeah, continue on to the next page. Several pages. Because this is still preliminary, I'm anticipating that the HVAC equipment will be in the attic. And it's noted there on the roof plan as well as the elevations and sections. And so we'll end up working with a mechanical engineer on the entire building system. So as far as the condensers, if you look at the elevation there in the lower left-hand corner, I would anticipate the condensers being below those two windows between where we show the trash enclosures. I don't have a pointer. I assume you guys are following me. Lower left-hand corner, that elevation. Yeah, right there. Thank you.
Is this the building that looked two-story from the outside, but was only single story on the inside?
No.
That's what it's two-story.
Yeah, this. And in the upper left-hand elevation, I'm showing the mechanical equipment in the attic. And so we'll probably use some sort of a concentric venting system. The energy code requires heat pumps, so those can be concealed within in the attic and not on the roof line. So hopefully that helps. It says item number 2, consider trash pickup. So there is an easement across the Wade Street property. We could go back and forth between the two sets that allows for a trash pickup or trash to be carried out to the Wade Street side for a pickup. So again, that lower left-hand corner is my elevations for the trash enclosure that will match the material of the vertical siding. Item number 3 says, consider landscape maintenance agreement with adjacent owner. Well, as we all know, any sort of shared responsibilities always gets a little iffy. So I would say that, we certainly would talk with the neighbor. To the west is Bob's Wellbred. To the east is the Meyer projects, which I think this board may have approved late last year. I don't know really how to address that other than, it becomes sort of a legal document in terms of a landscape maintenance agreement. What's that?
I think there was some planter boxes underneath the windows or something, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Right at the property line.
yes, we could go to the landscape plan. I think it's the last.
I don't think you'd have an issue, but because those guys seem to be pretty nice, but
Yes.
it's hard to get to.
So you see that the landscape for this project is all inclusive within the property line. So I'm not sure what it is that you might be looking for, but we can assure you that maintenance will be handled by this particular owner.
I think he was referring to the window boxes on the top side, second north. I don't know how you're oriented.
Yeah. Okay,
So how do
all
you
right.
access?
Good question.
So,
What's that?
it's just something you gotta do, you know?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Good point. Consider weighted columns. I've noted on my elevations that the post shall not be any less than 8 by 8. I think there was a concern maybe that they were 6 by 6 and looked too spindly was the word that was used. Teresa, we can go to the elevations just to confirm my notation. Continue, yeah. Yeah, so I've noted it here as 8 by 8 post minimum. Item number 6, consider incorporating significant landscaping on the south elevation to soften the start view. So again, back to the landscape plan, sorry to keep going back and forth. So we've added quite a bit of landscape there to the south property line, which is to the right. Plants that should be a little bit more vertical due to the aspect of the Waite Street side there in the upper right-hand corner will come nearly to the property line.
Tony, I think that was my comment. I think it was talking about the area between those two pop outs.
Two pop
To
outs.
consider that. It was just a request to consider it.
Yeah, okay.
To put a planter in that area.
And that's where I'm anticipating our condensers going. We've got limited space, so hopefully that's acceptable. And if we need to, we can carry the screening of those condensing units. So just got to be careful about proximity. And then I think the last comment, item number 7, members supporting climbing vines on hog wire fence. So what we've done is considered the two properties as somewhat a cohesive landscape element. So we've altered solid fencing and hog wire fencing. So for those areas that don't have landscape, we'll go to solid fencing, but find it would be far more attractive if we break it up so that there's a bit of a 50-50 mix. Okay, so with that, I've addressed those comments. Any questions for me? Any further concerns?
The landscaping or the plant material that's in that pocket on the upper part of that picture, what are those and are those appropriately scaled for those? I mean, the elevation shows them maybe a foot high under the
It was
windows.
a vine. If I remember right, it was a low vine. And it was kind of meant to provide some color. When Bethany was online, we talked about what her design intent was. And I was fine with it. I don't remember exactly what the plant material is. My concern was being able to maintain.
Yeah, got it. Specifically that area to the east there, right?
Yes, that those window boxes are raised. It's kind of a raised planter, if I remember right, underneath the window. Yeah.
If there are any specific questions, Bethany is available and can answer these questions.
I was fine with the plant material and
Okay.
the layout, and we talked about that tree not being able to grow, and that was removed. And I asked you to consider that planter, but if that's where you're putting your condensers, then that's not feasible, so.
I think what we have done is the possibility of an entrance structure to the right of that, Kevin. So that would be the passageway between the two properties and being able to wheel the trash containers out to the Waite Street side. I think that helps to enhance it, give it some aesthetic on the south property line.
Does any of the members of the board would like to see other sheets?
Yeah, the exterior elevations.
Okay.
Remind me again what a nickel cap is.
I'm sorry?
vertical edge wood siding with nickel cap. Remind me what nickel cap means.
Nickel gap. So it's just a thin line,
Oh, gap,
yeah, gap.
Using the coin to space. the
not
words.
cap. It's.
Yeah, so
okay.
rather than
Okay.
rather
now I
than butt
understand.
joining, just giving a little bit of shadow line between.
Also, your drawing shows your hatching is 4 inches and it should be closer to like 8, right? So it's gonna look better on your elevations.
Are you referring again to the vertical siding?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So and then what are you doing on the corners? If I'm imagining this not 4 inches, but 8 inches, what are you doing on the edge, on the corners? What sort of material are you gonna use? I couldn't find that anywhere.
I've done a couple of recent residential projects where we brought it to a 45 and that
Oh, you-
same gap can be continued with the appropriate flashing behind the corners.
So you 45 it and then you leave a gap? What is this?
Rather than doing an overlay, which I haven't provided those details yet, that'll be in the next round.
Is it durable to have a 45 with that old
It
wood?
depends on the thickness of the material, yeah. So if we go to a thicker material, if not, then I can use a piece of metal on the corner. And we can bring the wood siding and butt to a nice custom corner.
Incidentally, all of these details, the windows, the corners and all that stuff needs to be on your file.
Yes.
And you've got a band that goes around the middle and I just noticed on the elevations that it looks like it's 12 or 14 inches thick, but it says it's 5.5 inches thick, so, tall. So what's the band? What do you think the band should be?
I prefer a wider, thicker piece rather than 5 inch. So 5 inches is a missed note.
Well, it's on the elevations, not on the perspective stuff, on the elevations for all the information.
I gotta hand it to you for actually reading the notes. Can we
Well,
go to the elevations, Teresa?
I'm likely going to read all of them, so,
I appreciate that.
that's, A 3.1.
I think there was a question by one of the board members
See over on
in a
this-
previous meeting, whether we were going to just continue the vertical. If you go to my color board, I think this could be a potential input by the board. So if you go to my
But-
color
so
board,
but back to the band, you want it to be a 3/4 inch thick. And how thick is the wood? Is it 1 by the siding? So it's going to match the same.
yeah, 1
dimension?
by 3/4 inch, yeah.
Okay, so we need to see how that works, the detailing. And on your like lower right-hand corner where there's a big gable, do the boards?
Did we want to address the band first?
Well,
You asked me a
you're gonna
question about that, right?
Yeah, you're gonna detail it for us. But you've already said it's not gonna be what's called out, it's gonna be thicker.
Yeah, not 5
it's-
inches.
And it's gonna probably match your decking dimension likely or something, so that's something you need to work out. Like on the gable on the lower right, are you planning on staggering the wood all the way up, or is there gonna be like a line across with?
I'm sorry, I was taking a note. I missed you.
See the lower right-hand corner, the big gable? It doesn't
Yes.
have any kind of are you planning on staggering the wood so that there's no line across?
That's why I wanted to make reference to my color board. If we could go to the color board or the colored images. Down, there we go. So this is an example that we used as an inspiration. We want to use weathered siding. So the idea would be to stagger that. You can see on the top photo there, the gable. Yeah, so rather than having a straight line, it would be altered. I imagine that we're going to have that color variation in the siding that we ultimately pick.
So your intention is to run boards, not to break them?
Staggered, yeah,
To run them all the way up as much as you can, is that
absolutely.
like
yeah,
this?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna end up with different colors on your board.
You're way ahead of me. I appreciate your input, but I think that's all the things that we'll consider based on your comments.
Okay.
And here's some further samples here in the lower right-hand corner of the possibilities, either browns or grays. So again, I'm sorry. So I look forward to comments from the board as well.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
I have a quick clarifying question. There was a question about the span on the boards and something indicating a 4-inch width. but it looks like it's actually an 8-inch width, but I didn't capture exactly what was being referred to there.
But graphically, it's just dimensioned at the vertical lines are at 4 inches and they're actually 8 inches. It's just a matter of using a different hatch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
And it's gonna look better at
Much. Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Okay, as you're agendized for preliminary review, and responding to all of our comments on from the last meeting, I don't see any reason not to grant preliminary approval at this time. So with that said, I'll ask for a motion to grant preliminary approval on this project. Well, let me rephrase. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item?
We do not have any public comment.
Thank you very much. Getting back to the motion. I'll then ask for a motion to grant preliminary approval on this project. Second,
yes, I do.
all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you.
Aye.
Shall we wait for you to return? So now, next one's Wade Street multi-residential development. Let me gather my notes here. So it's been a long process. Last we were here, we had asked the board to support our 20-foot wide driveway apron, in which the county roads department was at that time requiring a 25-foot wide driveway access. We feel that the project has made tremendous improvements based on that, which lends a lot to the aesthetic of the project. So I'd like to jump to the elevations, which was our main focus. And I think Member King also had some issues with the elevations, which we've improved. I don't recall because so much time has lapsed, but at one point we had 5 units, 3-story. We're now 2 stories with 4 units. I believe we presented that the last time as well. So Teresa, if we could flip to the elevations, please. We can return to these as well. Continue on. Thank you. Keep going. So the elevation lower right-hand corner is the revised front elevation, which takes into account the 20-foot wide driveway apron. And again, I don't have a pointer, but the key part of all of this was having some mass to the left to support that second floor. And the previous requirements of a 25-foot wide, that we would have had just a spindle, a single wall thickness. So I think that helps tremendously. And then also, I think Member King had asked me to complete this gable on the right-hand side where the cursor arrow is currently at. That's coincidence. So that gable end is now symmetrical on both sides, and I've brought the building back to allow that to happen on that second floor. Okay, so that was the main thrust in aesthetically for this building, was to get County Roads Department to consider the narrower apron. So we're quite happy that they have. So we can return back to the site plan. Go back. Yeah, so this is significant too. These are the combined elevations for the proposed projects, both primarily to the east, which is the Meyer project. And you can see that we're far more in scale, bulk and scale with adjacent structures. And then the one we didn't cover on the bottom there is the Bell Street project next to the approved Meyer project. Just for reference. Okay. Let me get to your previous comments here. Pardon me. Okay, so comment number one, coordinate elevations with plans for adjacent proposed building. That's this diagram here or illustration. Consider use of outdoor living spaces. So we've considered that on the second floor. If we could go to the second floor plan. Continue to the next one, please. So the floor plan for the second floor has changed significantly. There were some concerns for egress. All of the bedrooms now face into this parking area or central courtyard, if you will. And then you'll see I've delineated some balconies for outdoor seating. There's some tremendous views from this property, especially to the south. So that's been accommodated. So that kind of addresses both the egress as well as the public or outdoor spaces. So there was a question about pedestrian access to the site. If we go to the previous page, please. We've added a secondary staircase there on the west property line. That'll give us access to the studio apartment above. And again, when reducing the apron to 25 or to 20 feet, I think it changed the project significantly. Rework the gables. I went over that. If there's any other comments, we can address it in your comment section. Item 7, consider bringing the second level of the apartment forward. If we could go to the next page, please. So I've altered the front elevation such that there's two different planes. The one at the top of the page, apartment 202, is more forward with the delineation for the gable balance. You have an open covered porch there, and then the apartment 201 I brought back. I think it's 3 feet, if I'm not mistaken. So that helped to make that a little smaller. Consider earth tones for paint and trim. We can see our color board or our color suggestions if we go to the previous, or excuse me, following pages. So what?
That's fine.
Yeah, there you go. If we could zoom in, I'm looking at sort of a two-tone color scheme and then a darker roof rather than the white, which were just used as architectural inspiration. So we're going to go to more of an earth tone palette. So I see the khaki brown is the trim and the building color, pretty much a Navajo beige, if the board finds that appropriate. And number 9, yes, design has come a long way. Hope you all agree. It's been a long road to working with the County Roads Department. So here we are with a revised project. I look forward to all your comments.
Are there any particular sheets the board would like to revisit?
Well, I was looking at the elevation, and if you go to the roof plan, I'll kind of explain. It's just a detail that needs to be resolved. The top of the drawing, that's a 9-foot plate. Is that right? 9-foot plate on the second floor.
It is typical.
Okay, so
heights,
when you come down where you have that recess in the front, there's a 1'9". So that plate is no longer 9 feet. That's 9'8" roughly, 9'9". Okay, so then if you go to the front elevation, this is just something that you need to figure out.
What I did there is extended the overhang as I recall.
Yeah, and it looks a lot better.
Yeah.
But the way you've drawn it on the elevation,
Will this work?
on A 3.1.
Yeah, further.
And like I said, it's just that it's something that I just wanted to call your attention. On the right gable, the one that comes out and looks so good now,
The one you had asked for.
that's it. Yeah, that's at 9 feet. It's really 9'8", so it needs to move up.
I'm gonna leave it just the way it is. I'll figure out what the plate height is. I just wanted to make sure I addressed your concern from the last meeting. I haven't done the math, but it probably is.
Okay, so
That's why you don't see a plate height there on the elevation.
right, but I just wanted to point it out because it's actually going to raise up a little bit, but it's not going to be a problem. And then if you look at
I
your
don't think so, no.
right side elevation where you've got the fascia, it needs to go up another 9 inches too.
I think that's why you see that horizontal band is a little higher than the left side.
But I just wanted to point it out. And then if you go to the next sheet, A 3.2, that fascia line up above should be above the plate height.
I'm sorry, I was taking a note. Which elevation?
This plate is actually above this plate height, so the whole thing moves up. Just to be, so that you're aware of something I noticed.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
It'll still resolve, but it's just, you don't want it to, somebody in the field to be figuring this out.
Any other comments at this time?
And I do think that elevation works a lot nicer.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for the input.
Okay, with that, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item?
We do not have any public comment.
Thank you. And there's no further discussion required for the board at this time?
No.
Okay. Then with that said, I'd like to ask for a motion to grant preliminary approval on this
Yes, I
item.
do.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Fantastic. Thanks for the input.
All right.
Thanks for the improvement.
Okay, gentlemen, moving on to our final item on today's agenda, the objective design standards for Senate Bill number 9. And the county's telecom ordinance. Is planning staff ready?
Good morning. Yes, Karina Venegas Martin, I'm available. And I'm ready to start whenever the board is ready.
We're ready.
Great. So I wanted to open discussion for any additional comments or feedback. I know this item was not agendized at the last meeting. So we are back to see if there are additional, again, feedback, input, comments on what was presented back in June.
The only additional comment I had at the time was to get a copy of what you were proposing, the actual wordage, so that we could stress test it.
So once we prepare the ordinance before taking to the Planning Commission, it'll be posted online and that can be shared with the board.
What's your current time frame?
We are aiming to get to decision makers sometime in November, potentially October, but that's a little ambitious for us. So we're looking at currently November.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions or comments. Under the, you had a section there for recessed doors and window openings.
Mhm.
And it said projections or recess shall be a minimum of 24. I have no issue with that. But the second part of that is the window shall be recessed at least 3 inches from the plane. I don't know if I can live with that one. I think that's kind of a strange question. Most of these windows are nail-on type windows. You can put trim around them, but it's much more difficult to recess them. And I'm not sure what you were looking for, what the concern was about the window there. So just trying to establish more identity at the window, or?
I would say more identity at the window, yes. Is there feedback for, say, something as an alternative to that 3 inches that's currently being proposed?
Like a requirement maybe for the depth of the trim or something that could achieve a similar result, perhaps.
Yeah,
Well,
I think.
Yeah, I mean, the concern, of course, is that we're looking for a one size fits all, but the reality is, of course, that the window trim and the window or the fenestration in general would want to, I would think, match what is existing. If the house was sort of a more contemporary design, it might not have any wood window trim. It might just be stuccoed up to it, or maybe there's a screed molding 6 inches away or something like that, where it wouldn't have any physical relief, but it would have visual identification. So I guess I'm looking at something that, rather than being so prescriptive about that, there might be a lot of different ways to provide window trim without saying you need to recess the window 3 inches. I think that's a pretty costly and more challenging to waterproof kind of issue.
Okay.
The door part, I think that's fine. I mean, the green code kind of addresses that anyway. So that was one comment.
Would that be a suggestion to maybe remove altogether?
I would personally support that, but I don't know how my colleagues here feel, but
Yeah, I think we can go a different route to highlight those windows.
Okay.
There was a question about the materials and colors continued there. I think it was, I think what I would like to think there would be that it should be consistent with the existing structure, rather than trying to maybe identifying all those different materials. I mean, that sort of says that you can do anything you want with these materials because you've accepted the materials. But I think that the key thing would be, we'd want a consistent and comprehensive design that would include the primary material to be consistent with whatever the existing material would be. Maybe it could be accented with some other materials, rather than saying, I have a Spanish designed house here with, and I'm going to put a colonial type house next to it. Well, the materials are consistent, but the architectural styling and the overall feel of the building would, of course, be radically different. So I think what we need to do is look at a way that we can have consistency with what's existing, as well as with the colors. I don't think you'd want to have a tan building and then put a gray building addition to it or right next to it. I think we would want to have consistency within the guidelines on the same site. And so that kind of falls into the next one for me. I have a kind of an issue about designating that there should be 2 roof slopes on there. Because I think architecturally you could have something that would be well designed. It could maybe just have a single slope roof, or it might just be a gable roof. And I don't know if a simple gable would meet this criteria. because it would maybe depend on the elevation. If, so either it needs to be clarified as to, are we dealing with two roof planes on a single elevation? Or are we talking about two roof planes overall roof? So I think that maybe fellow members have some input on that one, but
Steve, are you reading from something that was handed out or?
yeah, it was, I printed it off their presentation from last time.
But we didn't get any new stuff in our boxes.
No, I printed it from the last
So I
time.
didn't, okay.
Oh. Well, I'll hand it over to you if you want. Maybe you can put it on the screen.
Can I just ask, you asked, with like clarity, is it two roof planes on a single elevation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you just.
Or what was the
thing-
other one? You wanted clarity on two things and that was the
It's
first
sloped
one?
Roofs. It just says sloped roofs, at least two roof forms, primary and secondary. Now, I don't know what that, I guess I just want to get some clarity what that actually means or what the intent was.
Yeah, so I'll just add that we recently revised that based off of feedback that we did receive from SBAR. So we're looking at instead changing the language to say to provide at least two different roof elevations for hierarchy. And that could look like primary and secondary. And it's essentially to enhance, building entrances, add some architectural interest. But we revised it so it no longer says sloped roof. So it says two different roof elevations.
What if it
Does
was
that-
a flat roof?
Next time I'd sure appreciate some information about where we are. Because I don't have any, you're reading from something 2 weeks ago, 2
Well,
months ago.
probably 2 months ago.
And I haven't.
Do you, is it possible to put those on the screen? Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I can, well, it doesn't matter what I think, I guess, but I'm not sure that that language is any better or preferable to the previous language. I think it's gonna be really hard to prescriptively define what the roof should look like.
So as an objective standard, is there any feedback for language you might be able to suggest? Just as an alternative to kind of what we just revised it to?
Yeah, I think you could be, I mean, I guess my dilemma here is that I think you could have an architecturally well-designed building that could conceivably be a flat roof or just have flat planes for the roof. And they might all be flat with, and so that doesn't necessarily conform to primary and secondary. I think you could also have single slope roofs. They may not all be in the same plane, but again, is that I guess I'm having trouble wrapping my arms around this idea of two separate roof forms. Because when you say roof forms, to me, that means two different planes in sense of not necessarily parallel to each other or I think it's just difficult to be very prescriptive on something like that.
So instead of forms, we're using roof articulation. And then we're specifying that it's roof elevations for hierarchy.
Okay.
So we're no longer, we're kind of trying to stay away from the term form. Hopefully that provides a little clarity and is a little
Forms
bit
and
more.
slopes. So if it was kind of a Pueblo design flat roof, you would be okay with that?
I
Maybe
believe
have
that would be,
parapet around it or something, or?
that could be an option. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
The other issue with doing simple forms is simple forms are hard to do.
they are.
If they're done poorly, they look horrible.
You're absolutely
If you
right.
have if you have some articulation in the roof and some requirements objectively, then
Could you go to page 10, please?
it's, at least it gives some, it gives some interest. But you have to assume that it's going to be done extremely poorly, whatever we decide to do. And if we decided to say simple designs, it's your choice, it's going to look horrible. I'm afraid. These are difficult to do.
They are.
So I'd really like to look at the verbal stuff that you guys are working on.
Well, I think she's planning to put it up on the,
Yeah, but that doesn't help me. I need to look at it a few days ahead of time.
we've done this twice now.
Yeah,
And we had a lot of concerns with the verbiage that we looked at throughout this thing.
Well, these are just PowerPoint things, though. They're not really there.
Well, no, yes, they were PowerPoints, but we were looking at their quote unquote design criteria and trying to give them some input for the design criteria for this specific item, the SB9. Wasn't for anything else. It was.
that was objectifiable.
That was objectifiable. And that's what we ran up against, is that a lot of it wasn't really possible or even functional in some of the terminology that was presented. And I'm just wondering now, sitting here listening, if there doesn't need to be some language in the final decision makers tool bag that says, hey, look, this thing, each one of these things on an individual basis needs to substantially conform to its surroundings and pass some scrutiny of reasonable architectural design.
That's the problem.
But how do you get
When you
that
say
into?
substantial, what does that really mean?
Subjective, so.
That's all objective. So how do you, but everything we do is objective. We look at it and we say, hey, look, it does look good or it doesn't look good. And from our angle.
So the objective thing needs to almost be a checklist. I've got this many roofs, I've got this many doors, I've recessed my windows. If you do all that stuff, does it look better?
Okay, and that's the question. You don't know what you don't know what the project's gonna be. So how do you say that it needs 2 roofs, 3 roofs, 1 flat roof?
That's what makes it interesting to do. It's
Well, that's
hard.
the balancing act. I mean, that's the balancing between being too prescriptive and not allowing flexibility, as opposed to not having anything that you can say, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to look at the actual verbiage, because somebody's gonna find a door and drive a truck through it every time.
But I don't think they've written the verbiage yet, though. This is just input so that they can prepare their final documents.
Right. But
So they did ask us if we had comments, if we would give them back our comments.
Yeah.
And I read through them and I was like, dang, how do we be descriptive for every potential
It's really
style and issue?
And then
I would
that's
suggest
why we're
that they
doing this,
achieve-
because they're struggling with the same issue.
Right. No, I understand the problem.
Yeah.
I couldn't come up with any reasonable way to give them any more help than,
we're not writing something that's unique either. You know, like San Jose is probably doing this all over the
I'm
place.
sure every
And
place is doing it.
And somebody might have already, and that's where they came up with a lot of the graphics, I think, were from other jurisdictions. You know, they're all grappling with the same thing, somehow to get together and find out, you know, how they're approaching it too.
The only thing I could
I
say
imagine
about this
that
whole
they
thing
have.
is that they're so few in numbers and
them to do
so
it more.
potentially few in numbers that it's not gonna be a horrific issue. It's not gonna be a very prolific issue because the amount of properties that can take this thing are very, very limited. So if we can help them in some way, it's great, but I don't,
It's a very limited application
Right.
in the real world.
yeah.
I mean, and I just think we need to, the other question I would have for the planning staff there would be this terminology about shiny material. Again, I see that you put a light reflectance value percentage shall be below 0.84. I mean,
That's a very big deal in Santa Barbara area, particularly on the hillsides. That's what instigated a lot of the design
Lawsuits.
reviews,
Yeah.
was that they put stuff up there that was so shiny, it was gonna become dominant.
galvanized roof, for instance, right?
Or bright white buildings and stuff like that. They wanted everything to blend in. So if they don't put something like that in there, you're gonna end up with these little white spots all over the hillsides, which is something that back in the 90s, they were just up in arms about.
So maybe the term is not shiny, but reflective.
Yeah. maybe.
So I'll just jump in and add, we did revise our language to specify that it's reflective materials instead of using shiny.
Shiny,
We-
shiny's,
A little more nebulous.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's something you do at a party.
So,
So
we're using reflective, mirror-like, glossy, those type of terms instead of shiny.
Yeah.
Does that kind of,
I don't know if I'd use glossy because you could have glossy paint, but it would still be an appropriate color. But anyway, and the only other comment I really have here is the concern about the upper windows on the side elevation, and you have a definition of a minimum of 48 above the floor. I think you want to leave that open, that it could be an egress window in a bedroom. I don't think you want to limit that by saying it has to be a certain dimension off the floor.
We did just, we did talk about
I
that
know.
and we said that you have to meet egress, so you can't designate a height because then you're saying that you can't have a bedroom.
Because the
in that.
building code's going to override
That
that.
might be what we're saying is you can't have a bedroom. But I prefer the setting back dimension, setting back setbacks above. That's the one somebody's property value to go to be in the next door neighbor's property dropping in value because the guy builds a 2-story thing on the property line.
Yeah,
Which we
and
will.
maybe we can have some discussion about the 6-foot landscape thing, because I think that we kind of talked about that before, and I don't think that that's truly adding anything to this. If you have a second floor and you put 6-foot high landscaping on the first level below it, it's really not significantly going to impact anything. So
They need 20-foot landscaping.
yeah, I mean, so I would strike that personally. I think that's pretty much a summary of the comments that I have.
yeah, and I think that that's feedback we did receive back in June. We had conversations about the egress, and not only was it NBAR, but other bars did recommend us to reduce that to 42 inches to meet egress. So that is something we revised along the way. We also removed that 6-foot landscape screening. Instead, we're requiring that upper story unenclosed landings and decks for privacy concerns be set back a minimum of 15 feet.
Wow.
Is that the deck or the wall off the deck? Is that the deck?
That would be the deck. So unenclosed landings, decks, and balconies.
That's pretty much impossible.
Well, that's okay. Impossible's fine.
Mhm.
'Cause it's a check.
Teresa,
So you'd
Do
rather
you-
not, why don't you just say you can't have a desk down in the side yard?
They did.
Yeah.
going down
Shannon?
another, I think it might be page 12 on the PowerPoint. Oh, let's keep going further down, please. There you go. So this was where we started back in June. As mentioned, so upper story unenclosed landings, decks, and balconies, we revised that to be from a minimum of 10 feet from the side to now being 15 feet. And then we removed the 6-foot minimum landscaping. And we're just requiring that landscaping be provided for screening purposes.
Screening of what?
Again, just for privacy. So landscape screening shall be provided. Areas that would be visible from the landing deck or balcony.
Okay.
And regarding upper story windows, we retain the 15 feet from the side and rear lot line. And as mentioned, we reduced the 48 to 42 inches. And just having either a landscape screening be provided, or if there's exposed glass, that be below 60 inches to be translucent.
On that, is it 6-foot minimum landscape? Are you talking about height? Or are you talking about width, planting width? What is that?
It was intended to be height, but we removed that because it didn't sound like it would be feasible.
Did we do anything about minimum landscaping percentage on the property?
There might have been discussions about it back in June. Based off of feedback that we did receive from the other boards, we revised the language for landscaping to be either existing or proposed landscaping, that it shall be provided at a ratio of at least 20% of the lot area.
Well, 20% is quite a bit.
Yeah, 20% of the lot area, but does that mean that's 20% usable, or did you quantify how much is usable space? Because if you're pushing these buildings, 4 feet to the property lines, that's unusable.
Mhm.
Was there any
Well-
consideration for that?
Well, the consideration is that it should include like a mixture of trees, ground cover, shrubs, anything that's used for screening, all of that can count towards that 20%.
But I think what he's asking, Karina, is that 20% of the remaining lot area after the structural development's accounted for, or is it 20% of the whole lot?
The whole
growth?
lot,
Okay.
yes. Thanks.
That's a pretty high number.
Is that reasonable when we ask for commercial to be down to 15%?
Or less.
Although most residential is much higher. It's usually way higher.
What's it usually in the house?
20%.
Minimum 20, but
Residential development, it's 20% minimum. But the question I'm asking though is, you might hit that 20%, but there's still no functional outdoor space for the residents. Is that part of your consideration in your design standards?
Well, wouldn't that be under the open space requirement?
Yes, it would be under the open space.
Okay.
Yeah,
What is
that
the
would count towards it.
It's 300 square feet per unit, or 2 bedrooms or less.
Yeah, we've taken another look at that open space requirement, and we decided to reduce it to 250 square feet. And then for 2 bedrooms, if there's an excess additional bedroom, then it goes up by 50 square feet.
Maybe you should have on the minimum area, some kind of minimum dimension, like 10 feet or 8 feet or something. Otherwise, it's going to be a 4-foot strip, right?
Well, it'd be a pretty long strip.
Well, yeah, but they'll do.
That's
it
We
right.
have
They're going to drive a truck through it.
question.
we do have a minimum width proposed, that it shall not be less than 10 feet.
There.
Yeah, that's right. I see there.
Do we have verbiage for that?
Yeah,
No.
it's on there. It's,
Yeah.
if you go down a little bit, I'll go back to the open space one.
I have a quick clarifying question. So Karina, when you said that that's covered by the open space requirement, can the landscaping provided to meet the 20% and the usable open space, can that be overlapping? Like, can they count?
Should be.
Yes, we're proposing it to be considered and included as part of the ratio, about 20%.
Thank you.
I'm not, was that on a different sheet about the usable outdoor space?
It's on page 15.
But I mean, can we see it?
Teresa, do you mind just scrolling down? There you go. And then if we download this presentation and it opens up in PowerPoint, you'll have the exact language that we're proposing. It's saved on the PowerPoint notes. I don't know if that'd be easier to just open up now, Teresa, if you don't mind just downloading it.
So I know you clarified this, but I'm not clear. The open space requirements and the landscape requirements do not overlap, or do they overlap?
They may overlap, yes.
They overlap, so that means they're probably never going to pave or put pavers on an open space.
Well, open space can include a patio.
It can
Correct.
include Landscaping.
It can include balconies, patios, decks, unenclosed porches.
Is considered landscaping?
Yes,
Okay. Did not know
it's
that.
outdoor space.
Okay.
It's a very subtle.
Subtle difference in definition, but when I was looking at page 14, it didn't say what we've been assuming, which was usable outdoor space. I mean, if we're saying outdoor space, like you said, it could be a 50-foot long, 4-foot wide strip, which is usable for nothing other than a lawnmower, but what are you gonna mow?
Then they did give us a
But it does
10-foot
say
minimum.
minimum 10 foot.
So, yeah,
Right, but I mean, as defined, if we are saying and making a requirement that's a useful requirement, it's something that's going to enhance living in these properties, to say that a usable living space is interpreted as such, meaning that it is usable for outdoor living space, for instance, making it specific rather than just saying, however you manage to get 300 square feet or now 250 square feet, that's up to you, but that's all we're requiring. Instead of saying we're requiring that amount of space, but it needs to be usable in this configuration or somehow defining that.
But that's a hard one to define.
you can't.
But
just check.
it is
How's it
definable
usable?
even by adding the word usable as
My mother might
opposed
think it's useful. She could look out the window and see birds.
usable outdoor living space.
Thing developer though.
Well, I think with the 10 foot minimum requirement, that's almost automatic.
Thanks, Teresa. Can you just scroll down to 14, slide 14, please? There you go. Yeah, so in the notes section, it provides the original language that we were proposing back in June. As I mentioned, we have revised it a bit based off of feedback and conversations we've had with the boards. But as you can see from the slide, again, minimum width of open space shall be 10 feet. But the exact language in the notes specifies, if you just scroll down to the notes, Teresa.
So Corinne, the sort of the concept here, because
There you go.
kind of come in and say 4,000 square foot lots and you can put, X number of units on it. But the reality is that this will not allow that to ever happen. Is that the intent? I mean, are we trying to make this a document that prescriptively will deny that possibility? Because in reality, if you have 10-foot setbacks and you have 20-foot landscape coverages and you have a 4,000 square foot lot, it's going to be virtually impossible with a 15-foot setback for a second floor. I mean, it's not physically possible to accomplish this. So if that's the idea.
Instances of the county, they say no by saying yes with unmeetable conditions.
Yeah.
And you have to take that grain of salt one way or another, but I would say your comment is pretty much right on the end of the nail. That's why I said the amount of places this could actually be implemented with the conditions. It might be more than that, but not too many. I think you could still use the hands.
When you set this something in front of architects, they look for how is this implemented? How is it possible to meet? And I'm looking at this now and I'm saying, I don't think it's possible to meet this and create those kind of units on that size lot.
On that size lot, no, but on some bigger lots, there will be those lots that they can possibly do it on.
Right.
And that's.
I'm okay with that because I think it's
they're saying,
too
look, you
dense
can't
anyway.
Go to
So.
a bigger lot to be able to do it, and if you couldn't
Yeah.
fit it on the bigger lot, then God bless you, That's
And
how-
I'll just also quickly jump in to add that with state law, we are required to grant relief of those standards, specifically these design standards and other standards, to be able to accommodate up to 2 800 square foot units. We cannot preclude the development of up to 2 units of 800 square feet. So I just wanted to just remind the board of that as well.
And a garage and.
Could I ask a question about the open spaces? Is your intention for this to be on ground level?
Open space can include a balcony,
So no.
as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be ground level, no.
Okay.
But you still have to have the balcony far enough past it on the property line.
And if that balcony's got to be more than 10 feet.
And it's gotta be 10 feet or bigger, be open space, so. It's fairly restricted.
Well, that's fair enough. 'Cause I think it's too dense anyway, so.
It
I'm okay with
is.
that, obviously. And like Tom just suggested that if it's an ADU, they can't really deny this anyway. It has to be. They have to be able to comply with the state audit. to have tree lines with it.
Right.
Well, I hate to be a stickler, but I sure would like to see the word usable open space. Usable, the word in there.
Okay.
And I think you guys have done a really good job with this. It's, as you can see, it's extremely challenging to come up with language that is literally definable and not, I mean, even like the term usable is a pretty difficult term when you really try to boil it down, because that depends on the individual user of how they want to use that land. Maybe they just want to look outside at their little water fountain or something, you know, doesn't mean it has to be a patio, or it doesn't have to be a swing set, or it doesn't have to be, a, you know.
Can I stand there? Can I sit there? Yeah. But it's very subjective.
Extremely. So I have admiration for the challenge of trying to come up with this language.
Yeah, it's something municipalities across the state are struggling with. It's not easy to do. That's for sure.
I mean, even at the best of times, it comes down to interpretations. I have a recent project in San Luis Obispo that's, well, anyway, it's being interpreted by the planning staff there differently than I would certainly have interpreted. Of course, it's San Luis Obispo.
Do we have any closing comments for Karina?
I think that was mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful.
I would love to see it once
holiday.
you get it all drafted up.
Yes,
Because I mean, I know that at that point we can't have any more input, but it would be interesting to see it at that point.
Because we
Yeah,
can,
certainly. And as mentioned, once it's posted before the planning commission hearing, we can send it over for you
That'd be
guys
great.
to review as well and take a look at. Yeah. Well, thanks for all the feedback. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your work.
Happy holiday.
Okay.
Oh, I have a question before we do.
Wait, hold on.
Please, it's just a protocol thing. When we have applicants who are present and they wait for like an hour and a half, and we have people who are doing it in the convenience of their office or their home, and they are given preference, how does the scheduling work? I noticed that the Chopin property was added on. Did that mean that they could not, because he was going to be here, be moved up? Or that any of the people who are present take precedence over to those who are not?
Nobody takes precedent. What happens is Teresa she comes up with the agenda. She sends it out to me and I kind of review it as to what comes first, what shouldn't come first, what I think is going to take a short time. So we get to the bigger stuff. I mean, it doesn't always work out, but in this particular case, those items were added in after we had made the decision on the order. So no one in the audience, whether at home or in person, has precedence.
and a lot of times,
There's
a lot
no
of people
preference.
look at it if they're savvy with the city and say, I'm fifth on the list, it's gonna take 2 hours, and they don't come for.
Yeah, and they show up just as we get to their item.
Because we've seen them
Sometimes.
before, but
Yeah, they used to give you when it was only in Santa Barbara, they used to give you a relative time, but it
Yeah,
was
Oh, yeah,
never
because
gave you a
a
slot.
window.
there
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
20, 30 items and
Oh, yeah.
you'd be before lunch, after lunch, you know, around 3
But
o'clock.
I mean, I've sat on line for 6 hours for C-bar before. So,
That's my dentist.
yeah.
And then I'm also not really notified if they're going to be attending in person or online. I just send everybody a link, so.
It does make a difference.
Yeah.
Oh, it's much better, really.
I think they enjoy
Things
it.
get done a lot better on this.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
There's nothing, there's no substitute for in person.
Is that it? Okay, with that,
We have a motion now.
we have a motion to adjourn today's meeting. All in favor, say aye. Thank you very much for attending.
It's good to be back. Really? Really?